Welcome to the Outlaw Radio Show. My name is Zach Adams, and I pastor a church located just outside of Athens, Georgia. The name of the church is Calvary 316. If you're local, come hang out with us one Sunday morning. Our service is at 10:30. If you're not local but looking for a good Bible teaching church you can follow along with online, we live stream our service on our YouTube channel, which is calvary316.live. You can learn all about the church, our vision, mission. You can access our teaching media all at calvary316.com. Very quick, right here from the beginning, about 30 minutes ago, YouTube went down kind of, I don't want to say globally, but it's all over the place. It's starting to kind of come back. So I don't know if you're watching on YouTube or not, but we are still streaming successfully. x.com/Zach_Adams, my X feed, as well as Facebook.com/The Radio Outlaw. So we are streaming on X. We are streaming on Facebook. If we are not on YouTube, this is all being recorded, and as soon as YouTube fixes whatever problem they have, we'll upload the video either later tonight or tomorrow. So don't worry, it'll be posted. And so hopefully you're with us on one of the other platforms. Hopefully YouTube's working and you're with us. We will see. I'm joined in studio by the man that needs no introduction, the maestro of this dysfunction, Pope Creighton Vaughn, as well as our cast of characters. We've got Spice Daddy here to my right. To his right, we've got Dear Daddy. So how you guys doing?
Doing well.
Fantastic.
Welcome to Outlaw Radio.
So explain how this dysfunction works, Pope C.
Basically, it doesn't. We are much like YouTube today.
No, we're not. We actually work.
That's right. We actually got up. We are live. Basically, the show is brought to you by Get Fed Today, which is another podcast that we do. It is 5 Bible studies a week that me and Zach curate. They go up all on Monday. So if you are looking to get more out of your week, more Bible studies, it's a great place to start. We're currently, I think we just crossed 700.
What's very cool about, like, if you're looking for a place to access it, you can go to getfedtoday.com. That'll give you all the links to all the platforms. We also post out media. We don't have a Get Fed Today Facebook page, so that stuff gets passed along via our church Facebook page, which is Calvary316, facebook.com/Calvary316. We do have, however, and we don't mention it enough, a Get Fed Today X account. Again, it's just Get Fed Today. And so we, every week on Monday, when everything goes live, we'll post out a little ad with the list of who we're featuring that week, as well as links to the podcasts. And so that's a great way that you can not only follow along, but you can share that information with others. The podcast is Apple, Google, Spotify, really any place you get podcasting. So it's pretty easy to find. If you ever have any questions about it, or if you have a Bible teacher that you think should be featured, we're always looking for new Bible teachers that we can promote, solid Bible teachers. If you have somebody in mind, email us at popecreighton@gmail.com. That is our official Outlaw Radio email address.
Podcast email.
Yeah. We also have getfedtoday.com@gmail.com, which is also the specific email address. All that information you can find. But we're going to start adding a little bit more as far as promotional goes. We're also plugging an endeavor that Vinny has, our very own Dear Daddy, has a website called Review Diesel. Doesn't have anything to do with Christianity. It has a lot to do with diesel parts. So, Vinny, very quickly, can you explain what this is that you're doing? And we want to start promoting that along with the show.
Yeah, so it started out in 2012 as an idea just out of frustration. There's a lot of really good quality diesel parts that we install and sell, and there's a lot of really bad diesel parts. Just like there's good churches and bad churches. And my whole goal is for it to be about the Bible and bringing people to Jesus. And
very cool.
So when people check out in the shopping cart, we'll have a video that auto plays. Thank you for your purchase. If you have troubles that you're dealing with or anything like that, get a hold of us. We'd love to pray with you. And that'll basically be the last thing the customer sees when they check out.
So do you sell diesel parts on the site?
Yeah,
so you review diesel parts, but then you also have a mechanism that people can buy for their trucks or whatnot.
Yeah, at the beginning it was just, I could care less about selling parts. I don't I don't really need the money from it. I just wanted to do the reviews to help people save money so that they don't buy a bad part due to good marketing. And inevitably, it got to the point where people were just like, I just want to buy it from you. So we're building a retail website, but it started out as a YouTube channel, Facebook page, Instagram thing.
So how can people find this if they have a diesel truck, they're looking for a trustworthy source?
Yeah, so we have a Review Diesel Facebook page, Instagram page, TikTok, Truth Social, any form of social media, we're on it.
You're covering all the bases.
All the bases, and the YouTube channel.
That's awesome. You were about to jump in there, Spice.
No, I was just going to say, find your diesel parts, manly stuff, and manly Jesus.
Yeah.
Also want to just make mention, we were off last week. Most of us took a vacation. My kids had fall break, so we used the opportunity to get out of town and spend some time resting, relaxing at the beach. Pope C, Spice Daddy joined my family. It was a wonderful time, but we did something a little different. While we weren't live last Wednesday, we had our first premiere. So we had pre-recorded an interview with a good friend of ours, Christy McTaggart, who had written a book, some devotional musings, A Window in the Wall, and so we released that this past Wednesday to great success. Christy, thank you so much again for taking time out to join us, and if you happen to miss it, it is on our YouTube channel. And you can go watch. You can buy 30 copies of her book and support a good lady doing a good thing. These are musings, devotional musings, basically her journaling over 50 years of walking with Jesus. Very cool story. So I encourage you to check that out. That's what we did last week. I also want to mention, so Spice Daddy has kind of been on this before any of us. So we had gotten a little while back. Spice had done in fact, I think it was the very first set of Pepper Poppers, wasn't it?
Might have been the second.
Okay.
I think the first one I did was top 10 Christian movies. I think the second one was top 10 Christian books. So I think it was the second one.
And so you had done we're doing these segments, we're cutting them out, we're posting them, additional content for our YouTube channel, and so Spice did a Pepper Poppers top 10 Christian books. Wildly successful. We had gotten wildly successful. I mean, dozens of people really enjoyed it. Right. But what was neat is that somehow, some way, again, I think the providence of the Lord, you throw this stuff out there on the internet, and we don't track a lot of the metrics or the data. Creighton will throw out, how many Bible studies have been posted on Get Fed Today, but that's more or less just to highlight like this media archive that we've been creating. None of this is monetized. We'd love to do that at some point if the Lord so wills it, but that's not our intention. We from the very beginning, when this was literally a radio show, the only reason we were doing it is because the Lord opened the door and told me to do it, and we'll continue to do it. As long as the Lord continues to say do it. But there's never been a metric. Like we have no idea how many people actually listen to Outlaw Radio on our podcast. Again, what you're watching the recording of a podcast, and that was always the design of the live show. And we can see some of the metrics that pop up because of the way that YouTube works and whatnot, how many people view the live streams. But when it comes to the podcast, which is what this mainly is, we have no idea who all's listening, who it's blessing, who it's ministering to. And even like with these shorts, like we're not like monitoring what trends and what hits and we're just doing this because Jesus has told us to. And like, this is a wonderful opportunity for me and three of my best friends to hang out and do something fun on a Wednesday night, discuss the Lord, and it doubles, instead of like having a midweek at our church, a lot of our church folk really see this as their midweek, and they can watch it from wherever they are. They're joining us live typically. So this is just a ministry of our church, something that we do, but like it's not driven by numbers in any context. We just don't know. And that's by intention. That's by design, because that's not why we're doing it. And we never want that to be why we're doing it. If there's one person that's blessed by what we do on Outlaw Radio, that's one more person than we deserve. We're all saved by God's grace, and however he wants to use it, he can use it. our success is well done, good and faithful servant. It's about being faithful. It's not about numbers or popularity or trends. It's just about being faithful to what God has called us to do. But we did get, Spice did the book reviews, and we got an email through the popecreighton@gmail.com website from a guy named Lee Stevens that was like, hey, I'm a believer. Thank you. Like, I really enjoyed the book review. I've written a series of science fiction novels that are not necessarily like overt Christian, but they have a Christian theme and basis behind them. And would love for you guys to read them, review them. If you like them, you can let people know about them. And so Spice was very much, so I forwarded the email to Spice Daddy, and he reached out to Lee and said, hey, send me your books, would love to read them. And Spice Daddy was like way in on this. Like, I remember he had gotten the first copy and was like, I'm totally into this. And he started reading. So up until now, there's 3 books. And so Lee sent hard copies, and I had started reading the first one, but just with my schedule, don't have a lot of free time to just read fiction. But we were at the beach last week, and I love reading fiction at the beach because I will tend to gravitate towards either like church dynamic books or things related to ministry or commentaries, which doesn't really lead to a full vacation because I'm
not very relaxing.
I'm thinking about church stuff, and like years ago, it would irritate Jessica because we'd be sitting on the beach and I'm supposed to be relaxing, but instead I'm now talking shop, discussing things about the church, new ideas, this, that, and the other. And I just kind of learned over the years, especially with kids. In fact, like with little kids, I had to just not read at the beach because I would check out. And at the beach, I'm there to spend time with my wife and my kids and friends that we would bring, like conversations. And it doesn't need to be church ministry stuff. So I enjoy, though, when the time affords itself to just read something not church related, etc. And I'm a big Joel Rosenberg fan. I've read all of his books, fun stuff like Tom Clancy, but they're just too much for me to read at the beach. But so we went down, we were hanging out. I was like, all right, I'm going to finish book 1, the Destiny's Edge series by Lee Stevens. So I finished book 1, was captivated. Everything Spice was saying just resonated, hooked in. I had book 2 with me. I did not bring book 3 because I knew, like, at some point I was going to need to, like, check out. Like, halfway through book 2, like, I'm yelling at Spice Daddy about, like, hey.
It was great. At one point, you walked out onto the deck, and I turned to Creighton. I was like, don't be surprised if Zach comes in here in an hour and yelling and throwing the book.
Oh, my gosh. And it was spot on. An hour later, Justin's like, in about an hour, Zach's going to walk in here talking about throwing the book across
like the
room.
night, okay, so like,
and then an hour later, you walk in, I'm going to throw this book across the room.
So, okay, and kind of like it was a false promise.
Oh,
because,
my goodness.
Because I had started to get a feel of what was about to happen and reading the second book, and I was like, no. I was like, if this, I don't know this Lee Stevens guy, but you know what? If he does this, and we'll be careful here because I don't want any spoilers.
Yeah.
But I told Spice the day before, I was like, if he does what I think he's going to do, I'm out, throwing the book across the room, and like, no more. And so sure enough, like one morning, I had a cup of coffee, went out on the front deck. The ocean was right there. And sure enough, that's when Spice turned to Creighton, was like, in about an hour, because he knew where I was.
Yeah.
He's like, he's going to come in and want to throw the book across the room. I didn't throw the book across the room, but I really wanted to. And I was like, I'm done reading this. And then curiosity got the best of me, because a good storyteller, you know, with any good stories. So if you're like, and I'm a big fan of good cinema, whether it be like The Godfather or like The Wire and TV or The Sopranos or Game of Thrones or whatnot, like a good storyteller is not afraid to rip out the heart of his audience if there's a reason for it. And I think of like the Red Wedding with Game of Thrones, where everyone's like freaking out watching it. Like, you just killed off 3 main characters. Again, that's about as far as I'm going to go. But I ended up coming back, finished the second book. I've got the third book here, which I'll be starting soon. Destiny's Edge. This one's called Hero. But the reason I bring this up is that we've been texting with Lee, just a Jesus dude, loves the Lord. And come to find out, he actually has been listening to my dad on a podcast, on like I think it's called Through the Word.
Even more shocking, he's been listening to our podcast, and Creighton's IFS is one of his favorite.
I know.
segments.
That's not shocking at all. I'm great.
The intersecting of faith and science is like
Right.
his favorite segment. And it's like, man, what in the world?
Hey, if it blesses one person, I'm doing good.
Yeah. Yeah, we're still trying to, by the way, Lee, if you're watching, we're still trying to get Creighton off of this ego trip. Like his head trying to get through the door.
Oh, one of the coolest things is like yesterday I was messaging him, like we've basically become best friends. And he's like,
Things
I
are
have
getting
a
kinda serious.
he said, I have a surprise for you. And he sent me a picture of like a card game, kind of like Magic the Gathering. I was like, oh no.
Because I
Because
love card
right.
games.
I was
Yeah,
like,
we also like,
I messaged him like, you
So
may have
exciting.
chosen the perfect people to
Yeah.
to review your book and read it and get into it, because like half the church is
yeah, Lee doesn't know that he has people elsewhere that are as goofy as he is.
right.
Yes.
For sure.
No, he's
And I
found
say-
his people.
And I say that in like a really like polite way. Like,
Very loving, a very positive way.
yeah. So, but I wanted to bring up Destiny's Edge because I've got the third book I'm about, and again, I'm about to start reading. But today or yesterday, forget which day it was, he just released on Amazon the fourth book.
And I can confirm that it is very good.
Spice Daddy's like so in the know. He got a pre-advanced copy. He was reading it at the beach.
An arc.
Yeah, he was.
Advanced reader copy.
Yeah, it is-
What's up, my little pepper poppers?
Yeah. So, yeah, you have pepper poppers.
That's
out there.
right.
Like, there
So,
are 3 of them.
So one of the guys that I kind of work with, he goes, I don't like spicy stuff, but can I still be a pepper popper? I was like, absolutely.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he did. So
Make sweet peppers.
Yeah,
They make sweet peppers.
They also make sweet pickles.
They do.
I hate
do.
sweet pickles.
But they just came out. Lee just, again, on Amazon, released the 4th installment of the Destiny's Edge series. Again, we're working on trying to figure out a way, whether we either do a remote show where he's at or he comes into town. We'd like to have him on the show. And I have a lot of questions about just artistic styling, telling stories, really the decision to like, so the book, it deals with an alien invasion and some of those concepts and how that ties into Christianity and whatnot. And so we're going to start making a big deal about these books because, you know what, we ran across a good guy that's doing a good thing, and he's also not doing it for any other reason that God gave him this vision, put a call in his heart to do this, to use this talent. And again, I read a lot. He's a very good author. Like I don't actually do science fiction at all. That's not my genre. That's not my thing. Creighton can speak to this. You know me a long time. You were very surprised. I actually read that.
I was like 3 chapters in and then got distracted because reasons. And when you told me that you were halfway through the first book, I was like, oh, it's very good. Because there's no way, like,
Yeah.
you have a hard time watching Star Wars. Like, this sci-fi is not your deal.
Well, they didn't.
And
I mean, Star Wars went downhill after the first 3.
I agree, but I also like
episodes
the prequels.
1, 2, and 3.
I really like the prequels, yeah.
No, I'm talking about episodes 1, 2, and 3.
yeah,
prequels.
that's what he's talking about.
Yeah, the originals. The beginning of the story.
What is the
4,
argument
5,
that you're
and
making?
4, 5, and
met-
6 are the old
Creighton,
ones.
go.
He's
don't
old,
give
man.
it.
He's getting
don't-
weird. All
don't
right,
give it-
you're laying traps.
So
for
one
me.
of the
At any
hardest-
rate,
one
if
of-
Zach likes a fiction sci-fi, it has to be very good.
So I encourage you. It's a fun read. It's a quick read. It's an entertaining read.
So one of the hardest parts about being on vacation, besides you guys specifically doing nothing during the entire vacation, I'm
That's
not
how I
used
like
to
to
that.
Yeah,
vacations.
Spice Daddy had to learn how to vacate.
I really did, and meeting my shrimp quota for the day.
It helped that like within walking distance was solid shrimp.
And,
You know what is so
and
funny to
Besides
me?
those 2 things, the fact that I was so far ahead of you and watching you get to these points, it was exciting.
That was what you needed.
Oh yeah, watching you be like, "Where are you at now? What do you?" And like him being able to talk about it, and then our buddy Frank, he's already like Frank getting into this book.
That's also
Wait, Frank
bizarre.
is reading the books?
Oh yeah, Frank's already on 3.
He bought the third
Yeah,
book.
he already bought the
I
third
did
book.
not know that. That's
Yes,
awesome.
yes.
Yeah.
No,
so I mean, like, this is a very solid. When at
we
the end,
need Dear Daddy to get in on this.
when
I'm ordering them.
when I said at the end of my series,
They're
that-
really good. I say that. I'm a little
Review
bit into
Diesel
the
might
first
be
book.
sponsoring
we'll
science
review
fiction.
them.
Yeah,
So-
we'll review them.
Yeah.
So at the end of my series, when I said I wish somebody would make a good Christian science fiction series, he nailed it. Lee
That's-
Stephen, I wasn't kidding when I said
You're right.
This is a great series of books, and it hit every aspect that I wanted.
I tip your cap. Now, the episode's not about Lee Stevens' book, but we just wanted to promote that.
Before we go any further, I'd like to review another book.
Okay.
This is a very special book to me. And now that we're getting into the season,
Here, I'll help you. I'll help you out.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. This can be found on Amazon, and this is my most favorite time of year. And this book has to deal with it. And I guess you could call it fiction. It might be like a reality book, like a nonfiction book.
Or like a wonderful advertisement for Amazon.
Yes. It's called an Amazon Christmas. We got it right here. It's written by some really good friends of mine.
Which, hey, their names.
Their names.
You can go back.
Yeah, put on the close shot,
There you
Clayton.
go. Yeah.
See those
There's a
names at the
QR
bottom?
code. You can get through the QR code right there.
Is that a Christmas themed QR code?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think I've ever noticed that before.
I don't know if you can.
And now
Now,
Creighton
you're
hates it.
close enough. We got
Sorry,
it.
I don't know how.
Shameless plug.
We're
Go
so
ch-
professional. We're doing such a good job right
Jessica, this was in our bedroom, and we were cleaning out stuff. She's like, "Just toss it."
No,
I know. I was like, "No, it's going into the office." Spice Daddy would be so upset.
I have worked this. I have worked hard to work this into my bit.
Yes, you have.
For the last 3 or 4 years
Yes,
now.
you've been faithful to.
I
that.
have been, and now is the time to revamp this and bring it out, and just be on the lookout for it throughout the series and every episode. I might just surprise you at some point with an ad for it.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's get to the show. We're going to be talking about Middle East peace, Donald Trump, and what's happened this week. We're going to tie in current events with biblical ideas. We'll discuss the rapture. What does this peace deal mean? What's the deal with the tribulation? Are we really close to all of this? We're going to dive into some scripture. We'll be in Daniel 9, 1 Thessalonians 4. We'll be in Revelation 1. Got a lot of things that we're going to be covering today. But before we get to any of that, Creighton, let's roll an XY of Z's posts.
Oh, the YMC's post feel the beat. Every tweet, every thread, he's taking a heat. Tax on a case in a digital race. The YMC's post, he's setting the pace.
Put an album out on Spotify.
Right. We could have our own. So, like, fun fact, was talking to a guy at my son's baseball practice. We were talking about podcasting. So he sent me some podcasts he really liked. And so I couldn't help it, but I followed up with like, "Hey, I really like this one." And I sent Outlaw Radio. And the next day he was like, "Dude, you have like theme music to all of the segments. Like, what in the world is this?" And I was like, "We're professional. This is a professional thing that we're doing." All right. So X, Y, of Z's post. I want to begin with, very quickly, related to all of this, follow up on two stories that we use kind of as a springboard to show topics over the last couple months, because again, we want to kind of give a few updates. So we did an episode not too long ago. Jack Hibbs, who's a pastor in California, had come out and basically told his congregation, listen, if the California legislation, if they pass this piece of legislation called AB 495, that basically gives the state authority to take your kids away. It's a real provocative piece of legislation. He told his congregation, a big congregation, you need to leave California immediately. Get your kids out of the state, because this is that demonic, gnarly, destructive. And really at that point, people were like, there's no way, like, okay, the Democratic legislation, they're a bunch of wackadoodles. There's no way Gavin Newsom, who's wanting to run for president, dares sign something like this. So it had gotten to his desk, sat there a while. I think 2 days ago, it passed. It passed, and then he signed it into law. So in California, AB 495 is the law. It'll be interesting to see how the church in California handles that, what the reaction to that ends up looking like. I only say that to say, man, we should pray. We should pray for the persecuted church, and we often say that within the context of, like, you know, the Middle East, you know, Saudi Arabia or Afghanistan or Pakistan, whatnot, even Indonesia or Sudan. Various places where it's like, it's very dangerous. Again, what's happening, I think, is Nigeria with the Christian churches. That should be its own show at some point. It's a gnarly, or like the church in North Korea. You know, we place the persecuted church within the context of overseas, but we should really be praying for our brothers and sisters in California. I don't envy the decisions that parents have to make regarding these issues. So quick update, man, just that it passed. So a little follow-up from a previous episode. It actually passed, and man, that's crazy. Other thing I want to follow up with is we did an episode discussing that Donald Trump recently had come out, and he had, you know, in an interview, they were talking about in context all of the steps he's taken regarding trying to resolve conflicts across the world and bring about peace. That'll be a topic of later conversation within our episode. But he was talking about Ukraine and Russia and what he was trying to do. And he was asked about heaven. And he was like, I really hope that, you know, these good things that I'm doing might get me into heaven. We did a whole episode about that. I bring it up because I think it was Monday. He was flying to Israel, and then he was going to go to Egypt. There was this whole Middle East thing. He was asked by Peter Doocy, Fox reporter, kind of a follow-up to that idea. And he made this statement. He said, you know, I don't think that there's anything I'm going to be able to do to get into heaven. And there was a whole big media kind of uproar about that, kind of trended on X. I have a little bit of a different take to that statement. I love the statement. It's sad. It's sad in one regard because it's like it reveals something deep about Donald Trump and his own spiritual life and walk, or somewhat like his journey. I'll put it that way. Back in the episode that we did, like the angle that we took is like, hey, this works-based concept, like that's what you end up with when like your spiritual advisors are people like Paula White, who is very prosperity. What you do gets you into heaven. Like the fact that Trump was like, yeah, I don't think anything I'm going to do is going to get me to heaven. On one end, you're like, well, that's sad. I take the approach of like, yes, no, absolutely. Like that's actually like you're actually now on the appropriate path.
You're so close.
Like you're now understanding the gospel, because there is nothing you can do. You can usher peace across the world. That doesn't get you to heaven. Nothing you can do buys you a golden ticket to heaven. It's not at all about what you do. It's about what Jesus has done for you. It's about God's grace. And it's accepting the fact you can do nothing. Like the biggest challenge for people accepting salvation is the acknowledgement that they need saving. And if you can do something to earn it, you'll never acknowledge that you need saving. And so for me, like Trump saying, I don't think that there's anything I can do to get to heaven, might be the first indication. And maybe some of this has come from the Charlie Kirk thing. But I think he's realizing I can't do anything to get to heaven. I hope that that leads to the next step of like accepting what Jesus has done for him. So those are two follow-up XYZ's posts. I do want to get to something I actually did post. So my wife, one of her favorite movies that I had never watched before. I had never watched, Craig goes to The Notebook. No, I had actually seen The Notebook. No, this is actually even funnier. I had never watched The Goonies.
Wait. Until
I know.
You've never watched The Goonies?
I had never watched it.
You guys!
I had seen clips.
I've never watched The Goonies.
You've never watched The Goonies?
How?
I've seen the beginning like 852 times. I've
You
never
grew
watched
up in
the
the
whole movie.
80s.
I am this close to
Yeah,
doing
we
the-
didn't have TV. We were poor.
I am
Oh, that's
this
right. You
close
grew
to
up in
doing
nowhere.
And we were
Montana.
really staunch Christians, so they just assumed that.
I don't think you know how close I am doing the truffle shuffle right now.
Please don't.
So no, I'd never watched the Goonies.
That's crazy. All right.
So I watched the Goonies. I will say, wonderful movie. Like really well written.
Are we about to have like a Zach's Pepper Poppers kind of thing going on?
No.
Also,
no.
just a fun fact: one of the kids in the Goonies is Sean Astin, who later goes on to play Samwise Gamgee.
Who also goes on to play Rudy.
Yeah.
He was Rudy.
He was Rudy.
I've
in
never
the
seen Rudy.
Oh, you've never seen Rudy? One of the greatest sports movies of all time. Spice is losing his mind here.
I've seen it and I've met the real Rudy.
Anyway,
But-
neither here nor there. But I did tweet out or posted whatever. I said first time for everything, but strange take. The Goonies is basically. Now I want to get your guys' feeling on this. The Goonies is basically National Treasure without Nicolas Cage.
Yeah. That's a
Yeah,
pretty solid
I
statement.
can get behind that.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it was because they're looking
Vinny's
for.
never seen it.
It's got a map, treasure
I
map.
don't know the ending.
No, you don't know. You didn't do it, but like they find a pirate ship that's got
And they
gold
like
and
follow
treasure.
clues, and there's
Yeah.
a antagonist force that's trying to get there before them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally.
Look, guys, slick shoes.
Yeah.
you can
Typical
quote this
80s.
movie
Man, you can
really
quote
well.
I really can't quote this whole movie.
So anyway, no, there was not like a spiritual element to this. There's something XY. It's the X
Tell me
Y's of Z's post.
Tell me everything starting from the beginning.
I'm not going to do that. We don't have time for this.
We just start doing episodes where we just describe movie plots.
We do what we
Well, I
want.
was quoting
No.
the movie.
So
Oh
again,
my gosh.
I get right. Okay, you're quoting them. None of
You
us have,
started this.
we haven't watched that much of
Great
it.
movie. yes.
It is a great movie. So we're gonna get to. So like, let me
Dang it,
set.
if I knew we were going to play this, I would have put that
Okay,
as my
you can't-
GIF for
no,
the-
this is- you're fine.
I'm going back and I'm
You're-
reposting this
oh,
with
man,
the
Spice
Truffle
Daddy.
Shuffle.
So tonight's episode, which we will get to, let me set a little context, and then we've got another segment we're going to roll in here. Crazy events happened this week, going all the way back to a few years ago when Hamas sneak attack into Israel went in. It was a terrorist attack, like just a crazy thing that yielded a war. A lot of things have been going on in the Middle East, dating back to the Biden administration, like seismic things. Trump comes into office. They're trying to broker some type of a deal between Hamas and Israel. Israel is just decimating Gaza. Hamas has a bunch of hostages. Israel's wanting the hostages back. Trump's trying like lay down red lines. We need to get the hostages back. Israel has every right to defend itself, has every right to go after, like, you bring the people back. And this has been going on for a while, like a major deal. And in the course of all that, Hamas is, and also Hezbollah, which is in Lebanon, these two organizations, along with the Houthis, which are in Yemen, they've largely been financed, funded, and equipped, armed by Iran, which is why in the course of all of this process, Israel strikes Iran, which was a major deal. America comes behind that and then like decimates the nuclear facilities. Like we've had like it's October. Like Trump came into office at the end of January, like the last 9.5 months. We've seen like some crazy things happening in the Middle East. The idea of like there being some type of brokered peace agreement, in Trump's previous term, Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, had gone to great lengths to establish what was called the Abraham Accords, where several Arab countries accepted Israel's right to existence, entered into some peace agreements that got derailed when Trump lost. And Biden came in, but all of that Witkoff has been sent. There's been all these negotiations. What happened earlier this week is that Hamas finally, like Trump laid out a 20-point plan. Netanyahu came to the White House. There were negotiations. In fact, there was video where they were close to finalizing a deal where Marco Rubio comes in and whispers in Trump's ear. He leaves. He's got to seal the deal. He jumps on a plane. They go to Israel. He gives a speech to the Knesset. Hamas releases the hostages. I think it was 20 remaining. And then there's some debate about the remaining bodies being returned. I think only 4 have. And then Trump goes from, and it's an amazing thing. Like, he arrives in Israel to celebration, fanfare. He speaks at the Knesset. He gets a standing ovation. And then he leaves and he goes to Egypt. And he enters the room of like the Muslim nations who also give him a standing ovation. Like, Trump is accomplishing something right now in the Middle East that we have not seen ever. This is something like astonishing, pretty radical, and that's got a lot of people like asking questions.
Is Trump the Antichrist?
He won't live long enough to be the Antichrist. I don't think Trump's the Antichrist, but we can get into that a little bit later on in the episode, because that is that's a worthwhile question. Peace in the Middle East, like, what does that mean? How does this tie into the rapture, tribulational period? We're not going to get into tonight all there are factions within Christian evangelical circles that like don't think God has a plan for Israel anymore. Don't
think there's a rapture coming.
They don't believe in a rapture. They might believe in everybody kind of believes in the second coming of Christ and maybe some type of a tribulational period that will lead up to that. But so there's a lot of questions in the air. Like, what does all this mean? Like, what we're seeing in real time? Like, it is pretty astonishing where like Trump does something and like Hillary Clinton comes out and says, this is a great thing. Like, Joe Biden says this is a good thing. Like the pundits on MSNBC, CNN are like, this is astonishing. Like, to get that type of reaction from like deep haters means that this is a big deal. But what does this mean regarding our Bible? I'm not a big take the scriptures, take the current events in your newspaper and try to like correlate the two, prophecy updates within church. Like, I'm not that guy, but I do think what we're seeing is big enough that it does demand us having a bit of a conversation about what it means, maybe what it is, what it isn't, what it could be, which is what we're going to get to tonight. Now, before we get to it, very quickly, I want to roll another segment. We're gonna roll another Dear Daddy. So Creighton, cue it up.
Out on the Montana plains where the big sky meets the land, Dear Daddy stands with a Bible in a calloused hand. His heart is full of faith and his stories never end. He shares the wisdom from the rains where wild rivers bend. He's roped the winds of doubt and tamed the storms of fear. With a prayer and a grin, he makes the truth appear. From the Bible's holy words to the lessons of the soil, he shares God's love with honesty and none can foil. Dear Daddy, oh dear Daddy, hear the cold cry. With your cowboy heart, you answer questions why. Faith and life, you guide us through the darkest night. Dear Daddy, shine your wisdom,
Small
lead
dose,
us to
for
the
sure.
light.
All right, so here we go. We got a question. Dear Daddy is our segment where we throw out questions to Dear Daddy. He has no idea what's coming. These are all unscripted. If you, as a listener or a viewer, would like to submit a question for Dear Daddy, you can do so by emailing us at popecreighton@gmail.com. We need more of your questions because they're kind of left to me. So here's the question. Spice, stay out of it. This is not your segment. It's coming later. Dear Daddy. Dear Daddy. Have you ever had a friend die of cancer?
I have.
Follow-up question. If so, how do you minister to the family when you're also personally dealing with grief?
So that was...
If you want to tell a little backstory, go for it. This is your time.
My very, very good friend, Angie, passed away from cancer. It was terrible.
Angie was instrumental in getting you to Georgia.
Yeah, she's the reason we moved to Georgia. She was an amazing lady, just absolutely awesome. Treated my wife and kids like family when we had none here, and I kind of, incidentally adopted her kids as mine. If they were out of town, Chelsea and I were watching their kids, watch their kids grow up.
You worked for the company,
correct,
that her and her husband had founded.
Yep. And if the kid, as their oldest daughter was growing up as a teenager, you run into complications with your parents that you can't see eye to eye. And so when she was having a hard time with her parents, she would reach out to me like, Uncle Vinny, come take me fishing or take me deer hunting or whatever. So we spent a lot of time together through her teenage years, and I thought of her as like basically one of my own daughters. And so she was really struggling when Angie passed because...
Let me take it one step back. When did you find out that she was sick, and what was kind of the diagnosis?
So it was her third time being diagnosed with a different kind of cancer. And so we found out about a year before she passed. I actually found out much sooner than that, but she took some steps with diet and things like that prolonged it. And then
it was a bad diagnosis.
Yeah, it was. Well, she didn't care. She was done. Like, she didn't want to go through the chemo and the radiation and all that stuff again. So, she shared it with me and her sister-in-law at lunch one day, and we knew about it quite a while before the rest of the family did. And she asked us not to talk about it. And so, when she passed, her oldest daughter was just like, she was accepting of the fact that her mom was in heaven, but she was worried that her mom was going to be in heaven without the rest of them for such a long period of time. And so you don't ever want to say the wrong thing in that situation. So I kind of went home, prayed about it, did some Bible study about it. And I explained to her at a second or a lifetime on earth is but a blink of an eye in heaven. And so that really gave her peace during that time of struggle. That was her biggest struggle. It wasn't that her mom was gone. We all had a year to deal with that and, right all of the wrongs and say the goodbyes and all that. But then it was like the thing she hit me with is my mom's stuck in heaven without us for the next, 40, 50, 60, 70 unknown years.
Yeah.
And so, being able to explain that to a 18-year-old that's struggling, it's something that really bonded us together. So it wasn't fun, but I'm glad I was the one that she could ask.
Yeah.
So, yeah, been there.
So if somebody is their friend has been given a death sentence and you're wanting to, obviously you're dealing with your own grief and potential loss, but you're like, okay, I want to minister to this person. I want to minister to their family. What advice would you give that individual dealing with that?
Well, obviously,
that daunting challenge.
The most important thing in that situation is making sure that the person with the diagnosis is going to heaven. That's first and foremost.
Amen.
Because at that point, death is an amazing gift. If you look at it from the right view, right now we're stuck on earth living in sin. Death is a gift that God has given us so that we no longer live in sin and we get to live in eternity without sin with
Very
him.
true. Amen.
So I think wishing somebody back to earth from heaven is probably the most disgusting thing you could ever do as a human. Like, they are finally free. They have left this life of
Which
sin.
makes Lazarus' story brutal.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I would never wish somebody back from heaven to earth for my own greedy intentions. I look at it more as they beat me to spending time with Jesus, and I'm unbelievably happy for them. And I know that I'll get to see them again. So therefore, my grief is very easy to deal with and very fleeting. I mean, I was sad watching Angie leave her family, but I was not sad when Angie passed. I was excited for her.
Right. Would you say that the second thing is so one, make sure that person's going to heaven. But secondly, just the practical end of walking alongside of friends and family is like, don't feel a burden that there's something you need to say to make it better, but more or less it's really ultimately, because I was with you when you went through all this.
Yeah.
it's just like you were just always there. Like it's just being there, being available.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it was doing the mindless things. You know, it was going over and hanging out with Angie, and I'd ask her what she wanted to do that day. And one day, all she wanted to do was sit in a chair and watch me run my sawmill. I didn't necessarily want to run my sawmill, but I went and pulled some logs out of the woods and milled up some beams, and she sat in a chair and watched me all day, and just being there. Yeah.
Just being there.
Yep.
No, very cool. Well, thank you so much for that. Again, if you'd like to submit a question for Dear Daddy, you can do so by emailing Outlaw Radio at popecreighton@gmail.com. Again, popecreighton@gmail.com. Getting back to our topic tonight, let me start with kind of really the section of Scripture, very debated section of Scripture that sets for us what I believe to be the framework for our understanding of eschatology. And that's a big word, eschatology, just the study of end times events. And that framework is presented for us in a very powerful passage of Scripture presented in Daniel chapter 9. Now we're not going to, again, for the sake of time, get into all of the details, the nitty gritty, but we are going to look at some things, again, to establish a framework that's important. Daniel, for context, a Jewish man who had been taken out of his hometown, Jerusalem, into exile by King Nebuchadnezzar to Babylon, 1,000 miles away, to serve in the king's courts, his palace. Daniel, while there, remaining loyal to the Lord, again, read the book of Daniel, wonderful book, is wrestling with kind of a core concept. And that is God done with Israel? Is God done with the Jewish people? Yes, God called the Jewish people all the way back to Abraham in Genesis chapter 12. And then that promise gets passed to the son of promise, that being Isaac. And then Isaac, his second son, Jacob, and his descendants, Jacob's names changed to Israel. That's where we get the Israelites. His 12 sons become the 12 tribes of Israel. But Israel, being led out of Egypt back to the land of promise, are disobedient to God. They don't obey his law. They don't obey his commandments. They are very fickle, shallow people. And subsequently, God judges them accordingly. Not only do we have like the cycle of judgment being the book of Judges, about a 400-year period, but later on, as you get into 1st and 2nd Kings, God would judge the northern tribes through the Assyrian Empire, would judge the southern kingdom, Judah, using the Babylonians. So Daniel, being part of this punishment, being taken into exile, being a godly man, a religious man, a prophetic man, a prophet, is struggling with, is God done? Like, has God said, enough? What's going to happen? And again, you would have those thoughts, right? If the temple has been destroyed, the people have been removed, like no one's there anymore. And God gives Daniel this incredible prophecy recorded for us in Daniel 9, answering this anxiety within his own heart of like, are you done with us? It begins, and there's a lot of other things. It's called the 70 weeks prophecy. Daniel 9, verse 24, God speaks to Daniel, and he says 70 weeks or 70 sets of 7 years, so 490 years, are determined for your people and for your holy city. So right from the beginning, God's like, hey, Daniel, 490 years remains in my prophetic handling of the Jewish people, meaning I'm not done with you, and I have a plan, and I'm going to take 490 years to complete this plan for my people, Israel. So 77 is 490 years are determined for your people and for your holy city, that being Jerusalem. And this is what God would accomplish within the course of those 490 years. To finish the transgression, to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity. Those are all big, big items. To bring in everlasting righteousness. That's a big one. To seal up vision and prophecy. Wow. And to anoint the most holy, being a messianic promise. And then verse 25, he gives some more details. He says, "Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks." So 7 weeks, 62, that's 68 weeks within the concept of there being 70 weeks, 493 years. What's being articulated in verse 25 is from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem until Messiah, the Prince, is presented to the people. There will be 483 years. The street shall be built again and the wall, even in troublesome times. Now, 69 weeks, 483 years within context. Using the Babylonian calendar, that would be 173,880 days. What's interesting about that is, so from the command to rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah is presented to Jerusalem, this prophetic timeline would begin, this 490 years. Now we know that Xerxes gave that command that initiated this timeline. You go 173,880 days, April 632 AD. What happens? Jesus enters Jerusalem riding on a donkey. They're crying, "Hosanna, Hosanna, the King." Interesting. The Pharisees are like, "Jesus, you need to tell your disciples to be quiet." And what does Jesus say? He says, "I can't, because if you had known what Daniel had said, you would know your day of visitation. For even the rocks would cry out." So what Jesus is doing there is he's articulating exactly that his arrival is the fulfillment of verse 25 of this 70 weeks prophecy. So meaning, from the command to rebuild the temple to Jesus's presentation, that was 483 years, or 69 weeks, as the prophecy would articulate. We're told that after this time, Messiah, verse 26, shall be cut off, but not for himself, and the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and sanctuary. The end of it shall be with a flood. Until the end of war, desolations are determined. Now, what I see verse 26 articulating is that 483 years from the command, Jesus would appear, but what would happen? Would he be accepted? No, he would be cut off. He'd be rejected. He would die on a cross. And what would happen? That prophetic timeline would pause. There would be a flood. Jerusalem would be destroyed. The temple would be destroyed. I think that there would be a pause within the prophetic timeline. Now, within this, and this is the controversy related to the passage, I think we enter into what's now called a time of the Gentiles. Paul would write about this in Romans. God's handling of the Jews would stop. He would turn his attention to the times of the Gentiles. The church age, as we would say prophetically. Now, this is where we get into dispensationalism. We'll do another episode on that, but not for now. So just within the timeline, Jesus is crucified. The Jews reject him. That prophetic 490 years stops, leaving what? Well, 7 years. 7 years for God to finish his dealings with the Jewish people. Now you get to verse 27. Then he, and within the context of the passage, who's he? Well, this is related back to the people of the prince. This is the Romans. This is a Gentile. Other passages would establish this, the son of perdition, as being a global leader that would rise from a unified Europe, a unified Roman Empire. He, this global leader, shall confirm a covenant, peace accord, with many for 1 week. So it would include the Jews, but it would be a peace accord that would be global in scope. 7 years of peace would be ushered in, would be promised. Then we're told in the middle of the week, so at the 3.5 year mark of this 7 years, he, again, speaking of what we would call the Antichrist, shall bring an end of sacrifice and offering. So that's a rebuilt temple. And on the wings of abominations shall be one who makes desolate. Now Daniel will get other prophetic visions that will give more insight that this man, this Antichrist will go into a rebuilt temple at a 3.5 year juncture of this 7-year period, he'll go into the temple. He'll declare himself to be God. This is called the abomination of desolation. Even until the consummation, which is determined, is poured out on the desolate. So the end of that period would then culminate in the second coming of Jesus, which again, what's this all? To anoint, to seal up vision and prophecy, to anoint the most holy. So Daniel 9 gives us this framework of what we call the 7-year tribulational period. Please understand the tribulational period, and I'm a pre-tribulationalist, I'm a pre-tribute rapture guy. The rapture of the church, the Gentiles, has nothing to do with this at all. This is about God's prophetic dealing with Israel. 490 years, you reject Jesus, I'm going to shift my focus elsewhere. I will circle back. At some point, there's still 7 years left. Those 7 years begin when? Well, according to this prophecy, it begins that timeline, not with the rapture of the church. It begins with the signing of a 7-year covenant, a false peace between the Antichrist and Israel. It'll culminate at the end of the 7 years with the Battle of Armageddon, the second coming of Jesus, then the establishment of a 1,000-year rule and reign of Jesus. In the middle of that 7 years will be this abomination that causes desolation. The Jews will accept the Antichrist as their Messiah in the first part, the first 3.5 years, but their eyes will see the truth when this man establishes himself as being God within the temple. And then there's prophecies, a lot of different things that play out where they're told to flee. Jesus in the Olivet Discourse, Mark 13, Matthew chapter 24, 25, 26, 27, articulate these things. They're instructed to flee Jerusalem, for there's a great persecution that comes against the Antichrist and the Jewish people and whatever remnant of Christians that would remain at that point. So we have this framework established. By the way, later on, I think it's chapter 12 of Daniel, we're given in the indication that Jesus comes back. There's a period of, I think, 120 days that is the bringing of the saints from the four corners of the world to Jerusalem. There's the establishing of the kingdom. There's the judgment of those from Armageddon. There's the ushering in of the kingdom, the restoration of the earth, which also takes place. For Jesus will touch down on the Mount of Olives. From the Mount of Olives will split. A river of water will flow from Jerusalem to the Dead Sea. Ezekiel writes about this, that the Dead Sea comes alive again to the point that there are fishing that takes place within the Dead Sea. It's an amazing thing. So that's the framework. Now, what does that matter? This all begins with a peace. A peace. Is what we're seeing right now this peace? That's a great question. The answer to that is still to be determined. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Prophetically, what seems on the timeline, are there things that at least prophetically seem to be fulfilled, but aren't mentioned in the book of Revelation? Now, I guess before I even get there, I should flip to the book of Revelation very quickly to establish an idea. Revelation chapter 1, so John's on the island of Patmos. John is the beloved disciple. He's the last of the apostles. He's taken captive by Diocletian. They attempt to execute him. They try to fry him in a pan, boil him in oil. He doesn't die. A miracle. He gets exiled to Patmos. On the island of Patmos, he receives a heavenly vision from Jesus. Again, it's the revelation of Jesus Christ. It's how the book opens. It's Jesus revealing himself to John and revealing what he's going to do ultimately that reveals his person. John, again, chapter 1 seems to, in fact, let me actually read the context. Revelation gets a lot of flack for being confusing. I think it's one of the most organized, articulated books of the Bible. In fact, it's the only book of the Bible that provides within its own pages its own outline. Revelation 1 verse 19, Jesus tells John to write specifically what? He says, the things which you have seen, and the things which are, and the things which will take place after this. So Jesus gives John an outline for the revelation itself. Now, three components, three bullet points. Write the things which you have seen. Now, what would that be? Well, that would be chapter 1. This revelation of Jesus. Jesus appearing to John in glory. The things you've seen. That makes a lot of sense. And then he says, write the things which are, before then writing the things which will take place after this. Now, in chapter 2 and 3 of the book of Revelation, we have this transition to Jesus, using John as scribe, writes 7 letters to the 7 churches located in Asia Minor. 7 in numerology represents completion. I'm of the opinion that not only is Jesus writing to 7 literal churches during this day and age, that he's also writing to the church at large, all of us, that there's application. Again, each letter ends with he who has an ear, let him hear, what the Spirit wants to say to the churches. But that in writing to 7 specific churches, that Jesus is addressing the church as a whole, this church age. Again, 490 years for Israel. 483 years, the timeline stops. We enter into what we call the church age. Chapters 2 and 3 of Revelation is Jesus addressing the totality of this church age. Each of these 7 letters, I believe, corresponds to a different, not just age, but kind of development within church culture. The first 3 unequivocally relate to the first several hundred years of church history. You then get to Thyatira. I think that plays itself out to the Roman Catholic Church. You get to Sardis, the apostate church. You get to Philadelphia, the faithful church. You get to Laodicea, the lukewarm church, all of which I think culminate up into the things that come after this. Now, that phrase, again, I'll read it again, Revelation 1:19, write the things which you have seen and the things which are, so the have seen, chapter 1, the things which are, chapters 2 and 3, and the things which will take place after this. After what? Well, you get to chapter 4, verse 1, after these things. That's how it opens. After what things? After 2 and 3. This is a direct connection back to the outline provided in chapter 1, verse 19. After these things. After, I believe, the church age has come to a completion. John says, I looked, and behold, a door standing open in heaven, and the voice which I heard was like a trumpet speaking with me, saying, come up here, and I show you the things which must take place after this. After what? After the church age. Now notice, come up here, there's a capturing up related to what? A trumpet. I bring that up because you have then in 1 Thessalonians 4, verse 16, Paul writes, for the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, with the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds. That Greek word caught up is raptura. That's where we get the word rapture, to meet the Lord in the air. So this is not the second coming of Christ to earth, but this is another event, the capturing up of the church to meet the Lord in the air. And thus we shall be with the Lord. Therefore comfort one another with these words. Now, the totality of these things, I don't believe, scripturally speaking, so we're trying to conceptualize what's happening with Trump, the Middle East, this peace. I don't believe that the church will be on earth when Daniel's 70th week is initiated with a false peace. I think as far as eschatology goes, our understanding of end times, God stops his prophetic timeline at 483 years. There's 7 years remaining. He turns his attention to the Gentiles. It's the church age that will end with the church being caught up in the rapture, at which point God then turns his attention back to the Jewish people. This 7 years will be initiated with the signing of a false peace. At the halfway point, there will be the abomination of desolation that will end ultimately 7 years specifically later with the second coming of Jesus Christ. So my point, how do we process what's happening here with peace in the Middle East? If this, what we're seeing, somehow is the precursor to what Daniel is articulating in his 9th chapter, then I think the rapture of the church Well, it's always imminent. That's his concept. But could be very, very soon. Now, there are two other events not documented. So with Revelation, I think chapter 4 onwards describe a future period. Preterists will want to say these were things fulfilled in 70 AD when Titus sacked Jerusalem. I completely disagree with that. That's a topic for a whole nother conversation. However, they deal with Israel, a future time, not related to us. You have seal judgments that roll into trumpet judgments that roll into bowl judgments. You have two witnesses. You have 144,000 sealed. You have a lot of things happening. God, again, finishing prophecy, finishing vision. The question then, is there anything regarding prophecy yet to be fulfilled that we don't see a direct fulfillment of in Revelation? Meaning, are there things that we might see before the rapture of the church that would also play into our understanding of what's going on, aside from there potentially being peace in the Middle East? And there are two, scripturally speaking, events recorded prophetically we don't see a fulfillment of in Revelation, meaning that they could very undoubtedly happen before the rapture, things we will see. We will not see the ultimate signing of a peace related to what Daniel describes in chapter 9, because I'm a pre-trib or 7-year rapturist. What two events also occurred? Specifically, Isaiah 17 and Jeremiah 49 record a series of events that culminate in the absolute destruction of one of the world's oldest cities, which is also related to the arch enemies of Israel, and that is the city of Damascus. Damascus is one of the oldest cities on the planet. Historically, it goes back very, very far. It's related to Lebanon, Syria particularly. What's described in Isaiah 17 and Jeremiah 49 appears to be some type of a nuclear explosion, because not only is Damascus completely destroyed, but it is absolutely uninhabitable. Radiation, nuclear explosion would articulate that. Now, we don't see any mention of that in the book of Revelation. Spice, did you want to get in on that particular thought?
Maybe not that one, but I do have a question, but I want to see if you get to it.
Okay, then we'll wait. Then we'll wait.
And it has to deal with something that's mentioned, but I guess it kind of comes from a perspective of a person that didn't see the destruction of this thing, and they just see the...
Okay, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Just hold it. The other event that's not recorded for us at all in the book of Revelation. Now, that's not to say that neither of these two couldn't find some placement within the early seal judgments, because within the seal judgments, like we have global war, we have like a quarter of the Earth's population, another two, like we have like widespread destruction, we have pestilence, we have death, we have disease. Like, admittedly, these things could somehow fit within the seal judgments, but they're articulated very specifically in prophecy, so I think we could see them. The other event is recorded for us in Ezekiel 38 and 39, and that is this war of Gog and Magog, and a correlation of what we would know to be Arab nations. Russia, due north, there seems to be an event in which they attack Israel, and Israel's overwhelmed, was facing particular destruction, if not for the direct intervention of God. And that seems to initiate a revival within the Jewish people, looking for a Messiah, looking for the intervention of God, maybe even setting the table for the deception of the Antichrist. So we look at what Trump's doing. Is this what Daniel's describing? No. Now, it could be. And if it is, that means the rapture could be happening very soon. And we could be seeing some other really gnarly events occurring related to Syria, related to Russia. Interesting that Russia, very much an ally of Iran, but did not come to Iran's defense at all when Israel and America attacked their nuclear facilities, of which the Russians had helped them create. Russia is mired in their own quagmire of conflict in the Ukraine. That doesn't seem to be the dynamic. We also are given the idea that the rapture, again, no one knows the day or the hour, and it will happen at a time, Scripture say that you least expect it. Like Jesus would describe it as a thief in the night, meaning that conflict has ceased. It's the last thing anyone's really expecting. The rapture would throw the world into chaos, would give predicate, therefore, to the enemies of Israel to attack. Maybe Gog and Magog ties into that. Maybe Damascus ties into that. Things we wouldn't see because we've been raptured. This cataclysmic global conflict ushering in a peace accord. Maybe that could play itself out. My point within the concept of what we're seeing in the Middle East, interesting times, no doubt. Historic times, for sure. What does it mean? Well, that's yet to be seen. Is it cause for excitement? Yes and no. What it should be cause for is it should be motivation for our call as the salt and light of the world to be about ministering the gospel to the lost. Because ultimately, none of this stuff prophetically will happen until the times of the Gentiles are completed. And I believe that God has ordained a certain number of people. And when the last Gentile gives their life to Jesus, or Jew for that matter, that boom, these things fall into place. Interesting. Revelation begins, the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants, things which must shortly take place. And that word shortly doesn't mean they'll happen soon, because it's been 2,000 years since John received this revelation. The word shortly, in taxi, means that when events begin to occur, that they will unfold rapidly. And we see more things happening on the prophetic scale today than we've ever seen before, which should give us, again, according to Jesus' own words, an expectation, and therefore then the motivation to be about that Great Commission, to making disciples, baptizing people in the name of Jesus across the nations. You guys have thoughts?
Yeah, you didn't mention what I thought you were going to mention. One key point that you did talk about, and it's mentioned in the scripture, is the temple, which currently does not exist. It was destroyed in 70 AD, but it is mentioned multiple times in times eschatology.
Absolutely.
And so, which for John and Daniel, it's not something they would have viewed as something being rebuilt. It was just something that existed.
Well, for Daniel, it would have been rebuilt because it was destroyed then.
Right.
And for John, there's some debate
When it happened, when he was so I guess, and it's not talked about in Revelation.
Well, the temple exists in the book of Revelation.
It just exists. It doesn't talk about
there.
being rebuilt.
You can't have the abomination of desolation,
correct,
without a temple.
And so I think a key point to be looking towards the end time, whether it's 500 years or 1,000 years, or 5 days, is the rebuilding of the temple, which the current Jews in Israel are working hard towards the rebuilding of that.
Okay, so let me address that, because the bigger question would be, how does the rebuilding of the temple relate to the end times as far as the Christian is concerned and our anticipation? And I'll answer that. So I would say not at all. Like, for example, the temple could be rebuilt tomorrow. That has no bearing whatsoever on we just know that in the revelation of Jesus, it exists. Now, I'm of the opinion, and I'll just kind of jump right to the answer to the question about laying out all the framework for the sake of time. I don't think that we will see, as a church, that we will see the rebuilding of the temple. Now, as a side note, there's a group of Orthodox Jews, very well financed, that have everything ready to roll. Like tomorrow, if they were given the green light, they could not just begin the building of the temple, but they could immediately institute sacrifice and offerings
through the priesthood.
Yes, and
Which
they have the priesthood
they've already established genetically, according to some things I've read and some people I know.
Which is also an interesting thing, because the genetics of that, we have in the book of Revelation 144,000 Jewish evangelists, 12,000 coming from each tribe. The problem is how do you point lineage to tribes when the genealogical records were destroyed in 70 AD? Now, advancements in DNA and technology make that a very interesting thing. But my point is that there is a larger question. And the question is where there are Jews that very much would like to see a temple rebuilt. As far as the Jewish population at large, the latest polling shows roughly a 20% interest in that. Overwhelmingly, coming off the Holocaust, the Jewish people are largely atheistic. They are not predominantly religious, nor are they religiously adhering to Judaism.
And I can confirm that.
Yes.
But I think in terms of the eschatology specifically, Christian eschatology.
But here's my point. And I'm glad you confirmed that. The point and the question then would be, is okay, if you have a very small group of people, we can concede, building a temple on the Temple Mount, we have the Dome of the Rock, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, it would be like the predicate for World War III. Like the PLO, the Palestinians, have control of the Temple Mount presently.
Or the predicate for a 7-year peace treaty.
So, and that's informative. My question then would be, is okay, what, playing it out, what could possibly happen that would change the public opinion within the Jewish people where they would want to build a temple? Like what would rejuvenate their religious interest, or could it be like an overwhelming war in which they're going to be destroyed if not for the divine intervention of God? Gog and Magog, Ezekiel 38 and 39, where God directly intervenes, and you have a whole bunch of Arab countries get wiped off the planet, and you have a global leader that comes in as part of a treaty to a renewed religious interest within the Jewish people, saying, hey, as part of this treaty, we'll allow you to rebuild your temple. It takes 3.5 years. At the consummation of that temple, that Antichrist comes in and establishes himself as being God.
Wow.
Like that to me makes a lot of sense.
But I think you're missing one aspect of the thing, that even though a lot of the Jews that are,
they don't want to build a temple. They don't want to build a temple.
But they're not Orthodox. But I don't think it has to be predicated on war or destruction of the nations around them. I think it's predicated on the arrival of a supposed Messiah that they're waiting on. And whether they're looking for it or not, officially within either Orthodoxy or secularism or anything within the different sects of Judaism, all of them are looking for a Messiah that's coming for them. And,
most of the Jews they're atheistic. They don't care. So there would need to be a change in the national religious consciousness to predicate that new renewed stirring or awakening. Most Jews don't want a temple built because they don't want the headache. They don't care. They're not even looking for a Messiah. They don't care. But if there's a series of events that play out in which they see the divine intervention of God preserving their state, well, then now you have a renewed interest, meaning that a global leader can use that in part of a peace accord, saying, like, for example, if in Gog and Magog, the Dome of the Rock gets wiped off the planet, it could be like, hey, we'll allow the Arabs to rebuild, but you're going to have a Jewish temple next to it. Again, but my point within the concept of peace, right now the temple has no bearings whatsoever in any type of peace negotiation because the Jews, by and large, don't care. Events would have to change to create the need for that to even become a negotiating point. My point being, that's where I see Gog and Magog being maybe potentially instrumental in creating that predicate. You're right. No doubt the Antichrist will probably use the rebuilding of the temple under those conditions as part of a peace agreement, because again, the temple will exist when he goes in and commits the abomination of desolation.
And we have to have a temple with sacrifices for him to stop the sacrifices in the temple.
Yes. Now, where I would say, and I can make the argument where I don't think we'll see any of that happening, is that I think that there was something important about the ceasing of the sacrifice and offerings after the death of Jesus. Like, it's not a coincidence that Jesus, the Lamb of God, offered for the sins of the world, and then the Jewish people 30 years later, 40 years later, no longer ever being able to offer sacrifice and offerings, to which they still to this day aren't able to do. There's something about that is prophetic. The reinstituting of sacrifice and offerings to atone for sin, I think, makes more sense after the dispensation of the church age, tying into the accepting of a false Messiah, then tying into that offerings now being ceased again, and this now renewed awareness, awakening to the fact that Jesus was that permanent atonement. So that's where I would still place the establishment of the temple.
Well, I guess for us, it'd be less of a when is this going to happen and how than it is how fast is this going to
It'll happen quickly.
Yeah, and so
which is what makes events that are happening today relevant.
So
and worth consideration.
And that's why I mentioned the temple thing being rebuilt, is because Herod took years to rebuild the temple. Was it Josiah or Solomon took years to complete the temple, and so
Solomon built the temple quick. Zerubbabel, that took years and never reached its former glory, which is why the exiles would mourn over it. And then Herod, as an Edomite, wanting to gain favor with the Jews, like that, the rebuilding of the temple, Zerubbabel's temple, technically the second temple, that did take years to restore it to its former glory.
It still took years, so I guess.
But modern construction can change that pretty quickly,
right? And I guess that's the question: is how fast is it going to happen? And more as believers, like it's less about when is it going to happen and how fast is. Wrapping
this up, I don't think the temple is what we're looking for. I think what's happening in the Middle East is regarding peace. Now, we've had other peace accords before. Let's throw a little grain of salt to this. Hamas is not going to go quietly into the wind. There are a huge faction of the Arab world that doesn't want peace with Israel, predominantly doesn't want peace with Israel whatsoever, and absolutely wants no sharing of the Temple Mount with the Jewish people whatsoever. So we see very interesting things happening. It's yet to be determined what that looks like. The point of tonight's episode for Christians, the rapture of the church is not predicated upon any of these things. It could happen later tonight. It could happen before I finish the sentence. It doesn't matter. It could happen at any moment, which is why we're always expectant, and that expectancy creates within us. Like, people will say, oh, you guys are escapation. Like, you're looking to escape.
Yeah.
Well, yes and no. I'm not looking to escape. I'm looking to be called home. And in the meantime, knowing that I'm not called home, I'm busy about the service of my King and why he's left me here. I'm not looking to tap out until it's time. In the meantime, I'm ready to be about his business on earth until that time is over, and that should be the expectation. Should you be excited? Sure, be excited. But let that excitement be motivation for being about the Lord's business. And if you have a neighbor that doesn't know Jesus, you don't want the rapture happening tomorrow without that person. So go to them, tell them about the Lord, a coworker, tell them about Jesus. Time is short. It could happen at any moment. So don't let a day pass. It is 9:20-ish. Our clock is a little off here in the studio, meaning Pepper Poppers is going to have to get punted. Now, I should mention there is a possibility of us not having Outlaw Radio next week. We have a major church project happening that might require our attention Wednesday night. As of right now, that doesn't seem to be the case, but if we get into some issues, we'll let the audience know in advance. Before we tap out, I do want to bring up, because we made a big deal about this spring, House of David Season 1. We did reviews about. We thoroughly enjoyed it. It really coincided with the series that I'm doing, Harmony of the History, so it was very fun for our church to be watching these shows as we're studying these things in the Bible. They've just, I think, October 5th, so last Sunday, 2 Sundays ago, they released the first 3 episodes of season 2. I will say I'm kind of disappointed right from the jump that you have to pay for it. Last year, it was on Amazon Prime. So if you had a Prime account, you could watch them all. Apparently now, even if you have a Prime account, you have to subscribe. I think it's $8 a month to the Wonder Project, which is the actual organization that is filming and doing it. They're in partnership with Amazon, but like Amazon will roll out other things that you have to buy an additional subscription for, which totally stinks. I think I get why they're doing it, but that's short-sighted. Again, Amazon's got to be making enough money through the streaming, but you're going to have to pay for it. It's a 7-day free trial. So my wife and I, we watched the first episode. They've released the first 3. What we're going to do, I think our strategy here is we're going to give it a few weeks. We will watch the first 3 episodes. We'll do a review of the first 3, and then we'll start reviewing them 1 at a time or maybe 2 at a time, moving forward throughout the rest of the season. So we're still very excited about it. Very cool thing. We want to support it, but just laying it out for you guys. Watch the first 3. Listen, to support a Wonder Project that's doing a very cool thing, $8 a month, man. You're spending $20 a month for Netflix, which supports transgenderism. Forget that mess. Cancel Netflix and just pay for the Wonder Project. Watch good biblical television, and then we can have conversations about it, which is awesome. I think as Christians, we got to start figuring out some of that stuff. But our plan, we're going to take a couple weeks. We'll watch the first 3. We'll do a review, and then we'll start rolling them out in the coming weeks. So with all that being said, guys, thanks for being with me. Justin, if you could roll me out with a little bit of music. Again, thanks for joining me tonight on the Outlaw Radio Show. If you're watching, thanks for being with us. Check out Destiny's Edge, great book series. Check out Get Fed Today, wonderful podcast so that you can get fed each and every day. If you're watching, check out our podcast, Outlaw Radio. .org is our website, gets quick links, Apple, Google, Spotify. What you're watching gets released as a podcast tomorrow on Thursday. If you're listening to the Outlaw Radio Show, join us live. It's a lot of fun. You can join us. We stream on 3 different platforms, mainly YouTube, which is outlawradio.live. That's a quick link to our YouTube channel. Also stream to facebook.com/The Radio Outlaw, and my X page, x.com/Zach, ZACH_Adams. If you have any questions about anything, email us at popecreighton@gmail.com. Thank you so much for being with me. God bless. See you guys next week.